Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming here this morning. I thank the panelists also. It's good to be the company of people I've been professionally engaged with for many, many decades now. And so let's come straight to the point. You know, it's now 10 past, it's 11 past 11. And Mr. Chandrasekhar has to leave this place at noon sharp. Am I correct?
12:15, 12:10.
Okay, 12:15. We'll have our cutoff point at 12:15. So the way we'll structure this discussion is as follows. I'd like each of the panelists to speak, to have a kind of an opening statement, which could be roughly about 7 minutes. And if they go beyond 10, okay, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, at 7 minutes, I cut you off. Okay. And you make an opening statement, and then what will happen, I'll have a few questions for all the panelists. And thereafter, the panelists can react to what the others have said. And after that, we'll throw it open to the house. Anybody and everybody is willing to ask any question to any of the panelists over here. So what are we discussing today? Are television news channels generating more sound than light? Okay. We all know that it's far easier to put together a group of people, you know, in a studio or with outdoor broadcast vans and have them sort of argue with one another, scream and shout with one another. Sometimes they scream and shout so loudly and they are screaming and shouting at one another simultaneously so the viewer can't hear what anybody is saying. Now, once upon a time, I used to be a full-time idiot on the idiot box. I'm a privileged citizen now. I'm only an occasional idiot on the idiot box. But we know that compared to, say, a field report, compared to a detailed investigation where you have people travel, meet lots of people, make a long documentary or a program, this kind of program is relatively inexpensive. So it's a favored kind of mode of or let me say a lot of television news channels do this. The question that we are now asking is, this has always been the case, are television news channels taking extreme positions today? You know, whether it be on the issues of nationalism, whether on be issues on, you know, on just about any issue, are people taking extreme positions in order to sort of almost manufacture arguments in the hope that this is going to grab more eyeballs. Now, we all know that this whole television rating system is also rather controversial, and one could argue that why it's not accurate, it can be manipulated, and so on and so forth. But what we are saying is a third aspect that I'd like our panelists to talk about. Are we seeing a change? Are we seeing more television news channels kind of becoming more subservient to whoever's in positions of power and authority? At this particular point of time, for a little over 3 years, almost 3.5 years, we've had the Narendra Modi government. Do we see certain television channels being less critical, less questioning of whoever is in power? And in this case, Mr. Modi. And we can discuss also the most recent example of the article that was published in The Wire about Rohini Singh's article. So these are 3 or 4 broad issues. They're all interlinked. And to what extent do these issues have, to what extent are these issues linked to the way these television channels are owned, are controlled, the political affiliation of the people in charge, and not just the anchors or the editors, but those who own and control these channels. And therefore, it's very important that we've had somebody like Mr. Chandrasekhar here. I mean, in Parliament, he has a different profile, but as a person who is heading media organizations, I think this is one of the few occasions, perhaps the only occasions, when he's agreed to be with us and answer our questions. So let's start with you, if I may call you by your first name, Rajiv, and your reactions to some of the points raised.
So thank you for having me, Banjo, and being a panel. So let me just say, first of all, I don't bring to bear the editorial experience that all of you have. I look at media from a slightly different perspective, not slightly different perspective, very different perspective. I'm an investor and I'm a consumer. I don't have any elaborate views on what is editorially right or wrong, and I try not to do that in the way I manage my investments. So let me just say that off from the starting point. So whatever I say will come from that perspective. But having said that, I have been an investor in media for now almost 10 odd years, 2006, 2007. And I have built 3, in my opinion, extremely credible brands. Those brands are Asianet News, that serves the entire Malayalam community in India and abroad. Suvarna News 24/7, that serves the Kannada audience in India and abroad. And Kannada Prabha, which is a print product, and more recently a digital product called Newsable. All of them combined serve 35 million, 36 million audience. And they are profitable. They have a total combined investment that my company has made in excess of 350 crores. So that is the background with Jaipur. So I believe that the key to managing, and I'll use, this is obviously my perspective, the key to manage, and I have had, at times I've had investments in NDTV, I've had investments in other media organizations as well. And at one point in NDTV I had almost 11% of equity in the company. So, and I have been financially successful in all of my media investment. The entire media portfolio I have been extremely successful. So that's point number 1. Point number 2, I have made it my business not to have any executive role or involvement in any of the businesses I have invested in. I am an investor and a consumer, but I have no role, I've never had a role, and I'll never have a role. Because I know clearly what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. So when you ask me about format and style, and I'm taking all your points, one by one. Why a shrill studio format versus a detailed documentary format? And I've seen the Salafi program that, for example, Srinivasan produced. Why not more of that versus what we have, which is in-studio debates about scams or stories? Now, I have no view on that. I think it's for the editors to decide. I can only say one thing in this, and I am answering question 1 and this issue of extreme positions and question 2 in one answer. Let's make no mistake about the fact that audiences in this country, as are the people, are polarized. There is a polarization in what people want to hear, what want to support, what they like and what they dislike. And it is sharp, and it has become even more visibly sharp over the last 3-4 years. Now, are anchors playing to that, or are anchors reflecting that? Now, that is something that we can all sit and mull over. But the fact is, whether it is a Fox versus CNN, whether it is media, BBC versus Sky, across the world, there is polarization around issues. Now, in India, it may be a different set of issues. In the UK, it may be Brexit versus no Brexit. In the US, it may be Trump versus no Trump, or the national anthem versus no national anthem. But media is effectively carving out their audiences in this polarized market, if I may use phrases like audiences and market. So those are the 2 points that I want to make in response to your format and style question and your extreme position question. I mean, there is no middle ground today. There is no room for a journalist, or, by the way, for a politician. I will argue with you that when I stand up and make a reasoned debate about Aadhaar since 2010 in Parliament, not one media would pick it up. But if I go hammer and tong and say Aadhaar is this invasion of my life and is the big black thing from the George Orwellian world, I can guarantee you that media will pick it up. So there is, unfortunately, a vacation of that media middle space, whether it be politics, whether it be media, whether it be whatever. That's my view anyway. Now, subservient, look, I think there are different ways people will look at channel. I think if a particular channel is taking a right of center position, they will be seen as pro-BJP. If a channel is taking, or a channel or a website is taking a left of center position, or is seen as opposing those who are right of center, then they're seen as left of center. I think those are personal views, and the only way you can really measure finally the independence or the neutrality or the objectivity of a news product, and I don't mean just channels, is finally the big stories of the day, big stories of the moment are those channels or platforms covering it. And Paranjoy, you know, from my, we have spoken earlier in the past as well. Media in India, unfortunately, and I say this as a consumer, and I say this as somebody who's been a victim of many government issues, whether it is WLN in 2001, whether it is 2008 2G scam, whether it is, many big stories of the day, you've had many cases of media basically abrogating the responsibility. So, now, do you say that at that point that media was pro-UPA, that is why they did not cover 2G? Do you say that was the media all bought up by Mukesh Ambani, that is why they did not cover WLL? Now, I can say that, but I don't have any evidence to prove it. So this issue, this discussion and description of bias is from where you are standing. In 2001, I felt the entire media is biased against me and is biased in favor of somebody. And I remember India Today was the one magazine that covered that story. Outlook covered it, Vinod Mehta covered it, and then got raided for 3 days after that. You remember that. So I don't know how to quantify that. But I can tell you on my watch, this I'll tell you about me. On my watch, the products in which I have investments and ownership interest in have a mandate to be honest. They have a mandate to be right. That is primary. I am probably one of the only people who have insisted on newsroom guidelines printed, signed, sealed and delivered that every journalist in my companies have to sign off on. They have to sign off on guidelines saying that this is how you will conduct yourself. Not to me, they will sign off to the company. And so, I'll give you an example. Asianet News yesterday covered the Wire story. And it's not like me and Wire are in great love with each other either.
Yeah, I want to ask you a few questions about that.
So that is the nature of my relationships with my media companies. So
okay.
I just want to say that. So I have no views on subservient. I can only tell you I am not subservient and none of our media brands are subservient.
Okay, thank you so much, Rajiv. Raj, I'd like you to sort of take off from where, this way, from where Rajiv Chandrasekhar left off. And maybe you can start by talking about, say, subservient or not being subservient. Say, I have a personal view. The interview you did with the Prime Minister on demonetization, I would have done it differently, but that's obvious. You are not me, I'm not you. But then if I say, Raj, you asked the PM all the questions he wanted to be asked and never asked him the questions that maybe others would like him to ask. How would you react to that? Yeah.
Thanks, Paranjoy. And since we're getting straight to me, that particular interview came at a time when India Today was doing its Newsmaker of the Year. And it was a tough time because demonetization was on. And we did, as a matter of course, all our newsmakers, we seek an interview. The Prime Minister at that time said that he had difficulties if I could wait for a week to go extempore because he was making an address to the nation. And I said, we don't have it. Deadlines are deadlines. And so the agreement was that I would give my questions and he would answer them. And we made no bones about it. We said that these were written answers. But then I said the precise point that you said, is that I don't get to ask the questions or further questions on what has been said on this matter. So then we met informally and for almost 20 minutes I quizzed him on whatever I felt was important and went beyond it. And the other thing was that those answers had to be authentic in the sense that, yeah, sure, people might have helped him put together, but you could see the language that came through. And it was an important time, so we made that exception and said yes. Because people wanted to know his views. It was a very critical time when demonetization was there. He hadn't made his famous public speech at the end of 2 months, and that was in between. And he said this was too sensitive a matter for me to sort of completely go extempore on this matter. So that's to answer your point. All right, let's come back to the debate that we're looking at, and whether, of course, there's light and sound and we can talk about it, but one of the big questions is, are journalists meant to be watchdogs for the public? or are they lapdogs to the government? I mean, that's a big debate.
Whoever's in power.
Or whoever's in power. The second point I think that we need to look at is the rights and the responsibilities. And I like what Rajiv said, that he does have the guidelines to it. I have no issue, frankly, as both as a journalist and as a viewer, if channels are biased in a particular way and project a certain point of view. I mean, that has been going on for ages. Magazines, newspapers take stands, and you know that this is a right-wing or a left-wing paper. So that's the freedom that we enjoy in the country. I don't think we should ever restrict that freedom. And let's not forget that everyone has a choice to switch off, say, Republic, Times Now, whatever TV or whatever newspaper you like or don't like. And I think that's the greatness of Indian democracy, that it allows what I would call, what Mahatma Gandhi says, that let the breeze blow through my windows and doors, but I will not be knocked by anybody. I mean, I'm paraphrasing what he said, that I will not be knocked by any particular opinion. I'd allow all opinion to flow across my door and windows. So I think that is something that journalists need to observe when we are doing it, that we follow the spectrum and allow everybody to have their say in what it is. And that, I think, has increased ever since Parliament has become live telecast, and you'll see the kind of debate. So I think many senses, maybe Amartya Sen is right, we are argumentative Indians. We love debate, we love discussion, and primetime television right now is pandering to that particular need. If there wasn't a need, I don't see why these channels should end up with TRPs that are much higher than anybody else. So there is a public need that is being fueled. Then comes the question of the responsibilities and what is a journalist needs to be done. And actually they are uncharted seas. I was just thinking while I was driving here that I've completed 40 years in journalism, and just like these old sailors, we think we've done the 7 seas. And suddenly the Wright brothers come and start flying aircraft, and you realize there's a whole lot more to be discussed, to be discovered. And I think today's, we are all back to square one in journalism, where we're all learning. It's uncharted seas. Actually, technology has overtaken us in the kind of reach, the explosion, the ability to go so individual and personal in the way it is communicated, that we are competing not with just, when I joined the profession, just as the newspapers, maybe Doordarshan was coming out with television, and we had a pretty good run ourselves on this. Then the magazines came, and they added a lot more analysis. We were all 24 years old, covering 5 states, 4 states at that age. And today when we look at TV journalism, we think, wow, are these guys, cowboys or cowgirls doing what they're doing? They don't have the maturity. And I was thinking, actually, even that time we were doing what we're doing, because we were the young Turks of journalism, breaking free from the 40 years and 50 years. So I think you're seeing the huge churn that is happening in journalism. It is a very welcome churn, and I think there's nothing to be negative about it. But when we come to responsibilities, and I think that's the critical thing. What are the core values that we are doing, and why are we doing what we are doing? I think every journalist has to ask this question. Is that, why am I in this profession? What is the thing that drove me to come here and do what I'm doing? And I think you will come across 2 things. One, in my opinion, journalism is like a continuing university for all of us. And I speak, you will find that every day you learn something, and we then try to make these very complex subjects simple to communicate to people. And I think that's the essence, that you're able to take all this, whether it's GST, whether it's all that, and say, this is the crux, this is why you need to know what you do, how does it affect you? I think that's the fundamental principle that all journalists follow. And with these, there are 3 values that I think are very critical to journalism, and that's what we do in India today as well, is clarity, which I said is just breaking down everything, all this complex information, making it simple, and putting all sides together and bringing some truth into it. The second is credibility. I don't think you can go far if you begin to erode on your credibility. It is like a good friend dropping home who makes a statement and you find it's wrong, and then you don't believe him after that. A newspaper's credibility can crash so dramatically. It can take years to build it, but if you get one thing wrong, you're in trouble. You lose that audience that you have and the loyalty that you have to it. And I think the third quality is contemporary. Why am I seeing what I'm seeing? Why am I reading what I'm doing? Now, I can get the numbers. Pornography gets you the numbers. Sensationalism gets you the numbers. Is television journalism the tabloids of the past? That they take the sensational way of communicating news, as Rajiv said, you've got to shout and therefore you get the attention. Is that what we are heading towards on this matter? So if you look across the spectrum, I think there are 2 or 3 trends that we need to be very careful about, and the fact that we have competing fake news that is going on, how do we clarify it? I see Facebook making the change. The second question is the question of how do you see what you do on social media? Has anyone really questioned that? The fact is that you can pay Facebook, you can pay Twitter to move your tweets or your whatever posts that you put to enormous numbers. Now, isn't that in some way paid news through the back door, that you are able to then fool people into thinking that it is going viral when actually you're paying for that? So there are so many ethical questions that we have to raise, where television, when you look at it, which is coming back to this, the topic of our discussion today, is playing its own role. I think every media today has, and just for a moment, final point on India Today, why is a magazine like India Today still existing? You can ask that fundamental question also. And I think thanks to the chaos, thanks to the lack of clarity on many of these other media, India Today survives because of that particular thing, that we are able to bring a certain clarity in all this noise that happens, in all this thing. People are saying, just let me know why you're doing all these things, what's the truth about it? And I call it, and I think there's scope for all kinds of people, and I call what we are doing a fine dining experience. We're not the McDonald's of journalism, the fast food guys. You just put out everything, you go out and get it. We are the fine dining. You'll find that people like to go every week to a restaurant and eat good food. So we give you that kind of meal where we actually cook it properly, we think about it, we present it differently, we try and make it interesting and exciting for you to read. So there is scope in all these things to bring a lot more light and less sound. That's my opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raj. Raj has raised some very, very fundamental issues. He's used one of my favorite analogies when we talk about journalists and dogs, watchdog, lap dog, dog bites man, no news, man bites dog, news. Unless dog bites Narendra Modi, then it will surely become news. And the kind of dog, the watchdog can bark but cannot bite. But then it's okay, the burglar doesn't know that the dog cannot bite but can only bark. He's also forgotten the intelligent guide dog, helps a visually challenged person cross the road, sniffs out some explosive substances from a pile of luggage. But
in short, we're all dogs.
That's right. They're good guys, good dogs and bad dogs. Okay. The question that Srinivasan, that Raj has raised, and I think it's a very fundamental question. In this day and age of the proliferation of fake news, paid news, etc., he's raised those 4 or 5 C's: communication, clarity, credibility, contemporaneity. Sorry, that's a tongue twister. Why are we journalists? We are not there to be stenographers, no? We are journalists. We are not public relations officers. We are not, advertising agents. So why are we journalists? Are we holding truth to power? Are we ensuring greater transparency in public life? Are we holding accountable those who are in positions of power and authority to ensure that, okay, that proverbial fourth estate, the proverbial fourth estate of democracy, etc., etc., etc. So, your organization, NDTV, has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. I think it's been a long, long time since the spokesperson of the CBI wrote to the New York Times after the raid took place on NDTV saying, we believe in freedom of expression, but this has got something to do with financial misdemeanors. I'd like you to react to what Rajiv Chandrasekhar and Raj Chengappa said. They took 10 minutes. You can take 10 minutes.
Thanks very much, Paranjoy and Manoj and the group for inviting me. And I also do want to join Manoj in thanking Rajiv for actually being here, because it is true that it is very, very rare to actually have a promoter of a news network come on these panels. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of us, editors, former editors, serving editors, journalists, and you're essentially speaking to an echo chamber. And especially to come to, I wouldn't call it particularly a hostile environment, but certainly one where he's likely to face critical questions. Having said that, though, I have to say that listening to Raj and to Rajiv, I feel like I'm not clear whether we're talking about the same media environment that I, as a journalist, am experiencing, and what I suspect a lot of others are experiencing of the kind that we have in India today. Oh, sorry. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, I think that one of the problems is in how we frame these debates, like the debate that we're having today, as well as with certain binaries that we create, in my view, false binaries, about the nature of the media. So one of the points that was made is that this has always been like this, that we've always seen, channels or media houses with political affiliations or with ideological affiliations. I've been doing journalism for 22 years. I've never seen anything like this. This is not to say that we've not had situations where channels or newspapers may have had a certain editorial slant, or the fact that if you're critical of the government, you will invite blowback, right? I mean, during the Congress years, for example, NDTV, which was considered a quote-unquote Congressy channel, I remember doing, many investigations on all the scams that were unfolded, whether it was Part-1, whether it was the coal scam, whether it was 2G, and so on. And of course there was pressure, of course there was heat, but it was not to this extent. And to suggest that there's a complete equivalence between now and earlier, I think is completely disingenuous. Today I would argue that almost 90% of TV news and at least 50 to 60% of print news have become propagandists of the government. They essentially defend the government's inactions or actions, cover up for their errors, and attack their critics. Okay, so we had a bizarre reversal of the role of media. The media's role is meant to speak truth to power. Today, these channels are speaking power's version of the truth. And there's no better example than the one that was just cited about the wire story. Rajiv mentioned that Asian had covered it, but Republic didn't. In fact, there was an almost complete blackout of the Congress press conference in response to the wire story. 90% of TV news did not cover that story. That gives you just, in a very, just a summary, many examples, but just give you in a quick snapshot of how acutely compromised our media is compared to earlier. The second binary, which is also the way in which this debate is being framed, is about tabloid versus genuine news, news versus noise. Now, what we are seeing today is not tabloid news in isolation. There was a time when news was tabloid, when, for example, you had crime shows where people dressed as a cop would come and anchor it and scream at the camera, or you would have Nagin as a kind of, sort of a prime time discussion. What we are seeing now is a very clear, politically aligned nature of the noise. This is not something which has happened by accident. This is essentially editorial stance which is being taken, which is in complete lockstep with the ruling ideology of the day. So every night you will have, Hindu versus Muslim on most of these channels. It's either Rohingya, it's either ISIS, it's either Hurriyat, it's either some fatwa by some obscure ulema. This is what dominates prime time discussions, which perfectly aligns with this government's cultural agenda. What these channels are not showing you is what is actually happening to the country. You will not see anything about the job, you will not see anything about the economy, you will not see anything about demonetization, you will not see anything about farmers. I mean, on the day when 6 farmers were shot and killed in Madhya Pradesh, I switched to, what Arun Shourie calls, with all respect, the North Korean channels. And one was typically showing some obscure ulema who had made some statements, so many years ago. Someone else was showing some other random, So this, new role that we are seeing now, where the media has become a strange sort of shield, right? They formed a kind of wall between the government, between reality and the people, okay? And this is dangerous. This is not just tabloid. This is dripping communal poison into the veins of our society, night after night after night. My colleague Ravish Kumar has formed a saying, "Bheed khadi ho rahi hai." A crowd is being assembled. Imagine what this is doing night after night, and this is the only thing that people switch on in here. And to the question of choice, people are running out of choices. You can say, okay, you don't like Republic, switch to Times Now. You don't like Times Now, switch to Z. I mean, if a majority of media has gone down this road, then just imagine what the implications are for our society. To the third binary, which is given, that this is about consumers' choice. If you want to watch right-wing news, you watch Republic. If you want to watch left-wing news, watch NDTV. This is right versus left, BJP versus Congress. That, in my view, is another false binary. this is not that binary. This is about fake versus real. This is about often outright lies versus genuine facts. And there are example after example. Perhaps Rajiv may not even be aware, because I'm not sure how much he watches his own channel, where Republic and Times Now have led with patently fake news. For example, a statement that Arundhati Roy supposedly made in Kashmir, where she apparently was alleged to have said that any number of Indian army soldiers can come, but they will never be able to capture Kashmir. This was a news item picked up by a website called Postcard News, which is a fake news generating factory. It's a factory of writing fake news. This was a lead on Republic. It was ultimately turned out to be a false news. It was discredited. There was no apology. There was no retraction. Went on. Another example: the story that the Imam of Jama Masjid does not pay his electricity bills. Okay, this has again come from the same I would say, at the lower tiers of the right-wing ecosystem, where you spend rumor-mongering communal. This again became a lead on these channels. Imam has not paid, it, a big thing. Turned out to be a 5-year-old story. The bill had been paid, it had been clarified then by the electricity authorities. Again, it ran on prime time. Times Now actually ran a story based on an old WhatsApp forward, which had some kind of an ISIS rate card. How much ISIS actually pays for converting women and bringing them over into ISIS. This was, again, WhatsApp, old, fake, discredited, ran it all day, absolutely no consequences for it. So this is just going beyond, I beg your pardon, ideological differences. This is much more about what is genuine, what is a fact, and what is not. So I think there's a tendency, and this is something which has happened in America as well, where in order to discredit, quote unquote, the liberal media, Donald Trump keeps saying fake news, right? So what that does is that it kind of muddies the water to the point where you actually believe that there is nothing like an absolute truth. That is just a truth depending on which side of the fence you're on. So for example, the suggestion that Obama was not American and that he was a Nigerian citizen, he was a foreign citizen, was repeated enough times till it muddied the water from clear. But there is an absolute truth. Right? As journalists, we know that he wasn't. So I think this is again something we need to be careful of, that we don't fall into this trap where we see everything as right versus left or Hindu versus Muslim. There is something like an absolute truth, there is something like an absolute fact. And we must try to establish that. So, and in conclusion, I'll say that, again to Rajiv's point, that if the audience wants it, you have to cater to it. This is a dangerous argument, because at the end of the day, it's not a one-way street, right? If the audience wants porn, you're not going to show them porn.
I didn't say that.
No, you didn't say that. Yeah. But I'm just saying, taking that argument to the extreme.
No, I didn't even say that if the audience wants it, you want to cater to it. I never said that.
Okay. Well, I think you gave the assumption that there is a certain audience for a certain kind of news, and we have to
explain that.
You'll get a chance to explain it.
Yeah, sure. If you look at what has happened in America, for example, it's not necessary that just because there is a certain political mood, the mainstream media has to capitulate to that mood for, forget ideological reasons, for market reasons, right? Most of the liberal media there, most of the mainstream media there has held the line, okay, barring Fox News, which also at times now appears to be wobbling because, Trump is extreme. But whether it's the New York Times, whether it's the Washington Post, whether it's CNN, whether it's MSNBC, they have all actually upped the game of their journalism, right? Adversity has made them better. They finally discovered that they're journalists. I mean, we're not great fans of American media here, but for the first time we're actually watching their stories, watching their reporting, and to be honest, feeling envious. This is what journalists should be doing. They should be standing up, they should be holding the government of the day to account, they should be doing that without fear or favor. And the best part is that they're actually making money. CNN's profits have risen, New York Times profits have risen, Washington Post subscribers have increased, just simply because of the fact that there's an appetite for this. But here the reverse has happened. Here, and this is a peculiar thing about the Indian situation, chamchagiri, which you thought as journalists would never say, is actually selling. Right? So this speaks to as much as us as a society as it does about a media. Why is it that audiences want to hear this kind of stuff? Why are they consuming it? Why are they not listening to anything which may be critical of the government?
Okay.
Right? So, and I just end here by saying, Parag, that in a way now the wheel has come full circle for us. Because if we continue this path, the mainstream quote-unquote liberal media has already been discredited by the establishment of the day, and also in the minds of people.
You have a Minister of State regularly, repeatedly saying prostitute, prostitute,
Right.
prostitute.
Right. So I'll just wrap. The media that has come to replace it, the propagandist media, is also getting discredited because people understand this is not real. Reality is now leaking in. So this is not just doing long-term damage to us as media, but also to society, to the fabric of our society. And in some ways, reality will reach people. Earlier it was the domination of social media which allowed the current establishment to set the narrative. They dominated Twitter, they dominated Facebook, they dominated WhatsApp, and they encircled the mainstream media. They felt the mainstream media was hostile to them. Today the wheel has come full circle. The mainstream media is largely with them, and it's on social media, it's on WhatsApp that people are getting the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Srinivasan, also known as Vasu. Keep holding on. I started by asking a question to Raj. I have one set of questions for Srinivasan and one set of questions for Rajiv Chandrasekhar, and then they can react to what each other and said, then we'll throw it open to the house. Srinivasan, there is a view that NDTV is beleaguered, that the present regime is not favorably inclined towards the company that brings out your channel. There have been these tax cases, there's been a CBI raid. I just remind you a long time ago, 8th of April 2013, check it out on YouTube, Think India Dialogue, where Mr. Modi, who was then the Chief Minister of Gujarat, though I think by then it was clear he was going to become the Prime Ministerial candidate of the Bharatiya Janata Party, in conversation with Raghav Bahl at the Think India Dialogue, I quote him. And this was a time when NDTV was bringing out a series of programs on conservation of the tiger. It says, Planning Commission में चर्चा है, टाइगर के लिए 200 करोड़ रुपया दिए, भारत सरकार ने दिए, शायद वो NDTV उससे चलता है, मुझे पता नहीं, question mark. This was the Prime Minister, or then the Chief Minister of Gujarat is now the Prime Minister said. And then he quipped that there are some people who think tigers are secular and lions are communal. And as you know, Gujarat has a lot of lions. But the question I have for you, Srinivasan, is that it seems because of the fact that there have been action taken against the NDTV group on its alleged financial misdemeanors, that the NDTV group feels beleaguered and therefore adopts a far more hostile position vis-a-vis the government. Yes.
Okay, I don't want to make this too much about NDTV because I'm not really here representing the company. I mean, I'm here as a journalist. But, so I was just in a way responding to this Paranjoy earlier by saying that it isn't as if during the Congress years, a party with which we're supposed to be aligned with, or which, as one keeps hearing on Twitter, funded by, that we were necessarily kind to them. I just cited examples of my own work, where I was able to do a number of critical pieces on the Congress, and frankly, I never experienced a single occasion where anybody, higher up in the NDTV hierarchy, told me that you can't do it. So I think this is again part of, like I said, these false binaries that are created. And this is also partly a function of the fact that we are all, in a way, social media animals, and how acutely social media has come to set the mainstream media agenda. That if you report against the BJP, you're a Congressee. If you report against the Congress, you're a Sanghi. So this is alien to all the newsrooms that all of us have, in a way, grown up in and worked in as journalists. Okay. Newsrooms are scrappy, for the most part, unregulated places where everybody is pushing and pulling in their own direction. So I think, this is certainly not the case here. I think the worry here is that diversity, that scrappy, chaotic, disruptive nature of newsrooms and news organizations is changing, and is largely falling into lockstep in a way that I think is unprecedented, with the establishment of the day.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar. He is probably expecting it. as he himself mentioned, he's not exactly best friends with The Wire. But I'm a little puzzled about two things. An article was published on the 25th of January on Republic Television by Sandeep Bhushan. Another article was published in February, the 17th of February, by Sachin Rao. The second article alleged that there was some sort of a conflict of interest because Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar was a member of a parliamentary committee on defense, and he himself had substantial investments and business interests in defense production companies. What surprised a lot of us, and according to me, it set a bad precedent when a Bangalore court gave an ex parte injunction and directed The Wire to pull down those two articles without hearing the other side. You know, ex parte injunction means you don't hear the other side and you put it down. And from what I learned, these are still pending. So I'd like you to clarify. I understand that one of the writers, Sachin Rao, had an association with the Congress party. But the question that was, let's assume he had an association with the Congress party. The question was about facts and perception and the use of law or the law. I mean, it's everybody's right to move forward, but was this was this done with your full approval? And why is this matter still not being settled? And I'm not speaking on behalf of Wire. I speak as a journalist who is himself has had the experience of facing what are called SLAPs, strategic litigation against public participation. Yes, sir.
I didn't know it's called SLAP.
Double P.
No, so let's be clear here. I think we must agree that everybody in this country has equal opportunity to the process of under law. So if I say you're a chore, you have the right to go to court and say I am wrong.
Manhani kiya.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to get into too much of the details of the article and why I went to court, because the matter is sub judice. I'll just say this. When somebody says I am anti-Muslim or I am in defense production and all because I am an investor in a channel that somebody does not like, then you will have the necessary pushback from me. I am not a person who has created a 20-year career, a 25-year career with a lot of hard work for somebody to suddenly take a pot shot at me because they don't like the channel that I'm investing in. So I can assure you that this will be taken to its logical conclusion and the truth of this will come out. Having said that, ex parte injunctions against something defamatory are neither new nor are they some conspiracy to subvert the law. Ex parte injunction means that you go in there as a matter of urgency when something is wrong, get the court to intervene, send a notice to the other party to come there, present himself or herself, present with their lawyers and vacate it if they think they have a strong case. It has been multiple months, multiple hearings, and the injunction remains because there are facts in the case that are material to that injunction. So having said that, I won't say anything more. I think we must accept that in journalism, while we are all talking about the pursuit of truth, the moment you trespass into the untruth, the other side, who's victimized by the untruth, has equal right to push back. So that's my last word on that. We will hear.
Okay, you want to say something?
Yeah. So I have a couple of things. So I think Vasu misunderstood what I'm saying. I'm not saying channels play to what audiences want. I'm just saying that naturally the narrative and the discourse in almost all parts of the world have become polarized. And that is reflective in the way media is also addressing those polarized audiences. So I'm not in any way saying that that should compromise the right and wrong of what journalism does. But there is clearly a polarization around key issues like immigration, like the way we deal with other religions in the country, whether it's US, UK, India, whatever. And there are clearly views on this that are clearly on the spectrum of this issue. Now that doesn't mean if a particular channel has a point of view of, let's say, Rohingyas, that Republic has or Times Now has, that is in any way anti-Muslim. So if anybody wants to characterize that as being anti-something, it could also be easily characterized as pro-something. So my point is, you talked a lot about false binaries, and this is exactly the argument that is being used against channels like Republican Times Now or whoever else, that is that you are using false binaries to describe a particular channel as pro-government or pro-Hindu or anti-Muslim or anti-Christian. Where what they are doing today is they believe that this is their point of view, this is what is right, and they are saying it. Just like you have a point of view of what you believe is right. And there is no, unfortunately, there is no encyclopedia or manual or Britannica encyclopedia of what is right on an issue of Rohingya Muslims or on what Arundhati says in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, on the issue of fake news, on the issue of integrity and correctness of the content that we put out there, that I think media as an industry has to introspect and figure out a solution. It's not about Vasu saying Republic is wrong and Republic saying NDTV is wrong. You will have to figure out a way of having, and I've argued this in Parliament as well, we will have to figure out some model, not just the ASCII, not just the Editors Guild, not something. There has to be something that is punitive when platforms go out there and put deliberate fake news. So that is a solution. And I've said this multiple times in the public, that we must evolve.
All right. You want to say something quickly? I'll go to Raj. I'll come to you.
Okay. No, I'm glad you brought up Rohingya, Raji, because again, what I was trying to say, the false binary I meant was between the suggestion that it's essentially a point of view based on which channel you are. What I was trying to say is that's not the case. There is something like an absolute truth. If you take Rohingyas, for example, which have been declared universally as terrorists by both the channels you mentioned, right? There is enough evidence available, publicly documented evidence, to suggest the very opposite. For example, the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister made a statement on the floor of the Assembly in January of this year, saying that in the state of Jammu, which has the maximum number of Rohingyas in India, not a single Rohingya has been found to have any terror link or has been radicalized in any way. Now, this is coming from the state government. This is not coming from NDTV. This is not coming on WhatsApp. So, this is a verifiably established fact. Similarly, there are laws with this government, which this government itself has endorsed, which allows those like Rohingyas who are fleeing violence or persecution to seek what is called a long-term visa by the Home Ministry, and an estimated 5,000 to 6,000 of them have been granted a long-term visa by this very government. So, to report the fact that the Rohingyas, a section of them are radicalized and have a scope for extremism, but to also report this is what a journalist should be doing, which is what we do. Not just going one side and saying that one side is because I feel this way, and if someone else has another view, that's an ideological view, or that's a false view. So that's to the first point. To the second point, I agree with you, Rajiv, when you say that there has to be some punitive measures, there has to be some consequences for patently peddling false news, of which I cited, several examples, and I think that's something which Paranjoy, Raj also come in, that one of the reasons why we find ourselves where we are today with the media is that there are simply no consequences. The regulatory structures that we have proved to be completely incompetent. Because the kind of news that you can get away with today, I mean, this is the stuff that can cause riots, that can cause harm to people. Forget reputations, that you mentioned the wire. This is something that goes much beyond. You're openly calling for violence against certain sections, against certain individuals.
It's essentially hate speech. It's hate speech. It goes against, this whole provision of Article 19(2) of the Constitution, which the so-called...
I'll give you the example of this, the Kannada writer and rationalist K.S. Bhagwan, who recently made some sort of a statement pertaining to Lord Ram. Now, he's somebody who already faced threats at the time of the Kalburgi assassination, saying that you will also be made a Kalburgi. He's made some recent statement as well. Again, one of the channels, I think it was Times Now, actually went on air, putting out his face, saying, look at what this man is saying, how long will Hindus be silent? Now, what is this? It's not an incitement to hatred and action. This man, as Rajiv knows, because he's from Karnataka, is a respected writer, he's the winner of a Rajyotsava award. And yet, you can do this and get away. So, unless there are consequences, whether it comes from within or whether it comes from without, where is it?
Okay. I think we can have on some other occasion a more detailed discussion on regulation and the media, because it's a very complex subject. There are multiple agencies, the issue of punitive powers. I think we are in agreement on that. Raj, if you can quickly react to what both Rajiv Chandrasekhar and Srinivasan had said, and then we'll throw it open to the House.
Firstly, let's look at the audience that Srinivasan was talking about, or Rajiv was talking about. you will find that English television channels, news channels, I think, Rajiv, you know it, barely 2% or whatever it is of the total. In fact, Hindi channels, if you take the ratio of what Hindi channels are putting out versus what English channels are doing, maybe 1/6 of the viewership, English channels, news channels.
Who said the nation wants to know?
Now, but when we come to the points that, so therefore let's not, no, my larger point is let's not get, to think that we determine public opinion to the point that we could do a lot of things. It's a minuscule in terms of the overall country that you're looking at. And I'm always struck at the fact that Hindi channels, for instance, don't do the kind of, or they've not reached the level of debates that we see in things. Maybe they have a different kind of audience, they have a greater amount of prime time. These are commercial considerations that go on. You will find that actually the debates are restricted to prime time. The rest of the time, these channels try to put out some news and see what it is, what's happening out there. The second point, I think, is that Vasu, I should be calling it here. Vasu is ignoring the fact that while take a look at the issues you raised, farmers, you talked about the economy and the jobs, it's television channels blindsided by the fact that they are so interested in pursuing what is the top of the news or some sensational thing that Times Now or Republic is doing and trying to do a Me Too, quite forgets that there is a whole lot of things that concern people. Now, India Today, for instance, put the economy in trouble with an inverted elephant 3 weeks before television ever got to it, and said, what can we do to solve this problem? It's a critical concern. We said no country for farmers long before anybody actually began to react. And we had a very, very in-depth story that looked at what the problem was. And the other thing, when you look at jobs today, we have a tombstone as a briefcase which says jobs are grave crisis. How do we resurrect employment? Now that is not sucking up to the government. These are critical issues that if you actually examine with the kind of depth that it has, a kind of constructive criticism, you will see that you have traction. People actually listen to it. Okay, so I'm saying let's not brand everybody as a kind of Paranjoy's leading question to me that why did you do a written interview? He very easily forgets or doesn't want to remind that, look, 1 or 2 years back in the Tribune, I had a 45-minute extempo interview with the Prime Minister. I mean, no one remembers the fact that you questioned all these things. Or if you want to go back into history, in 1992, 2 days after Babri Masjid, I interviewed Narsimha Rao and we carried it as the cover of India Today. So if you selectively take these things as TV would do, it looks, yeah, Raj is on this side of the divide. And you straight away bracket me with the kind of, guys who follow all that's there. Quite forgetting that there is, I believe the way forward, and you're looking at two issues, I think that's very critical, is one, you're looking at how do we look at penalties or self-regulation? What is the way out? I mean, that's a very, very big issue to look at. I ran the Tribune for 5 years as editor-in-chief. Every day, about 500 news items would get into the newspaper. Every out of those items, I could be charged, I could be, with defamation and sent to prison. Don't think that there is no regulation happening. Because what happens is I think that's very important in newsrooms, the first barrier is the newsroom itself. What are the standards you build in to ensure that you're having fair play, you're having balance, you're putting out the right things? The second thing is that more than anything else, you know your credibility is on the line. With peer review, like what we're sitting here, I mean, you wouldn't want your colleagues to be saying you're a lapdog of the government. I mean, there's a very important pressure that happens on you. The third point is that you also have, when you look at it, there is enough recourse in law to fix you if you do not do it. It's not like journalists have an untrammeled reign over here. You do have laws that if you incite communalism, I know an editor lost his job in Bangalore because when he wrote something, there was communal violence and he was sacked and he was also sent to jail. Okay. So it is not that you have anything. We can continue the debate on whether we should...
We indeed need to have a longer discussion on this whole issue of media regulation.
And the only point I'm trying to make is that you have a great spectrum out there. And if, for instance, if TV, the light and sound effect that you have, if it wants to do debate, during that particular prime time, I have no issues. It builds its audience, loses its audience on the basis of what it tries to do. It shouldn't cross the line. I'm very clear about that.
Yeah.
That it shouldn't be irresponsible. It shouldn't be inciting communal violence. I think sooner or later, the Indian public, let's not take him to be a fool. Let's not forget that this is a democracy that has thrown out big governments. When Rajiv Gandhi had a 400-seat mandate, in no time he lost. I don't think this government is that invincible. If it doesn't do what's right, the people will answer. And I think, let's not forget that we are reporting to the people. We're not reporting to the government as press. That public knows what it wants, why it wants it, and it will seek. You will see a cycle. Why did newspapers evolve into the format it was? Where you had the front page, what is important, there's an opinion page. So what Vasu is talking about is the opinion page of the newspaper. We would put down those opinions there as critical as anybody else or as favorable. But our newspapers used to be left for factual reporting. Okay. So you will see that over a period of time, you will come back. There is a tremendous chaos and churn, but the good principles will come right back because finally they're serving the public, not the government. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Raj.
I know you need to go to audience, but I just want to just say one thing very
Sorry.
quickly. Which goes back to the fact that Rajiv is here. And I hope Rajiv felt that I was not too harsh on either Republic or that kind of news, because one of the ways, of course, as you mentioned, is the fact that we have regulatory mechanisms. But the reason why I said that, Rajiv, is because I know that you care for India very deeply. You love India, but I really feel what is happening is hurting India. So and I appreciate the fact that you don't interfere with the running of your channel. But if there's a way that you could, and if we can appeal to it, if I can appeal to it, and somebody others, please stop.
All right, Vasu.